Transcription number 100 and 101 at the rate 80 word per minute, 2000 words. Continuously dictation at the rate 80 word per minute. So be ready, start. Sir, it is usual in all parliamentary systems of government for the president at the opening of a session to address both houses of parliament. It has been criticized as being merely a narration of facts which have happened during the past year. But that is the usual thing as honorable members know, which happens in most of the parliaments which work under parliamentary systems of government. I am sure that the honorable members are aware that India has always stood for peace and ever since her independence has done what she could to preserve peace in the world, both in Korea and in Indochina. Our efforts led to a ceasefire, and for the first time with the settlement of the Indochina problem, there was no shooting war anywhere in the world. But now again there are war clouds, especially in the Far East. As has been emphasized by the Prime Minister time and again, patience and tolerance are necessary to solve the tangible in Formosa. Our government have recognized the Chinese People's Republic as the government of China and have recognized the Chinese claim to the Cairo Declaration. If the Cairo Declaration is to have any value, then it is fairly certain that Formosa is part of China. But at the same time, one cannot forget the fact that things have got to be tackled recently if this problem of Formosa is to be solved in a peaceful manner. That will take time and it is towards that end. I am sure that our Prime Minister is working so that there will be no clash in the Far East with regard to the question of Formosa. This has been prominently mentioned in the address of the President. We hope that patience will be exercised by both the sides to solve this question and there will be no incident which might lead to serious consequences. Our agreement with China on Tibet, which formed the basis of the joint statement by China's and our prime ministers regarding Panchala, must form the main principle through which international tension can be eased and finally peace established. I am glad, sir, that recently the King of Laos has accepted the idea of the five principles put forward in this declaration. It is usual in the present time of atomic age to talk about the dangers of the use of atom for warlike purposes. The question is whether the new instrument in the hands of man is going to be used for the benefit of humanity or for the destruction of humanity and human civilization as we know it today. Both the United States and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics possess atomic weapons, and the United Kingdom government has now planned to manufacture hydrogen bombs for their security. As the Prime Minister has pointed out time and again, our country is not interested in the production of atomic weapons, but we are immensely interested in the use of atomic energy for peaceful purposes. There is no doubt whatever that in the interests of human civilization, these weapons should not only be banned but destroyed. The question is how you who is going to take the risks. There have been appeals that as the USA was the first nation to manufacture these dangerous weapons and use them, therefore, they should be an example by destroying the bombs in their possession. Stockpiling of atomic weapons would lead to a dangerous situation, and somebody therefore ought to make a start in the matter of the destruction of these weapons. If moral standards are to be the guiding factor, it will be a great help to humanity. If this step can be taken, if only there is courage to do so, the USSR will have to follow suit, but unfortunately, there is the fear complex. Most nations want to protect themselves and want to guard themselves against any surprise attacks by the other side. So the armaments race goes on. They forget that this mentality will eventually lead to war. They think that negotiations can take place only when one can speak from strength, but they forget that two can play at this game. So long as this view is held, the armament race will go on and tension must certainly increase. The conference, which meets in London in a few days' time on disarmament, I hope will find a solution. The complete banning of nuclear weapons must be the first step that any conference should strive at, and I hope that under proper international supervision this step will be taken. But connected with this is the question of the reduction of conventional armaments. There must be a realistic approach to this problem. The USSR today possesses so much strength that it should be the first to agree to reduce its land army in the interests of the good relations that should exist between nations. One hopes that it will understand this position and take steps to get this done. I am glad that the Atomic Energy Commission of the United Nations has recognized that India has a to play in this field and has asked our leading nuclear scientist Dr. Baba to preside over the conference proposed to be held at Geneva. The USSR has promised to show how she has been able to set up a nuclear plant producing electric power, but great steps have been taken in this connection also in the UK, and the recent report on atomic power placed as a white paper before the House of Commons shows that by about 1980 there will be about 12 to 13 stations working in various parts of that country to produce electricity and power for peaceful purposes. This is a great step, and our country will benefit by the steps that are being taken because our intention is to use atomic power for peaceful purposes. Mr. Deputy Chairman, there is no dispute in regard to the question that the working journalists had been suffering for long and that they need legal protection in their profession. As they were suffering, government appointed the press commission, and as a result of the recommendations of the press commission, we are here discussing this bill today to safeguard their interest. Now, our aim is to protect them from their employer. This bill gives them protection under the Industrial Disputes Act, as the operation for so many years of this act was in the hands of the Labor Department or the Labor Ministry. That department and that ministry are fully aware how it should be operated, as there have been lot of difficulties and lot of differences of opinion between one courts in one state and the other court in the other state in regard to one item and one interpretation stop. The interpretation is required to be incorporated in this bill as to what is meant by a workman. The Industrial Disputes Act has given the definition of the term workman, but it has been interpreted by different courts in different states in different ways. Now again, we are dealing with two parties, and one party is the employer. Stop. In the definition of the employer, also we do not find if we can properly put the directors or the managers as the employers. Now, this bill has tried to exclude certain staff and certain people doing certain jobs. Sir, the intention of this measure is to safeguard the interests of the working journalists by bringing them under the purview of the Industrial Disputes Act, by which they will be provided with certain machinery where they can go for the redress of their grievances. Sir, we must make sure that working journalists may not be defined as employers instead of as workmen. If, as we say here, an employer is one who is employed in a managerial or administrative capacity, there is bound to be difficulty. I will cite an example. Now, a working journalist might get two typists in his office and he may have three peons. He may be actually supervisor acting on behalf of the manager also. Now he is performing two jobs. He himself is working and he is also performing the work entrusted to him by the manager or the managing director. If such a person has got any grievance, he goes to this machinery that is to be appointed under this bill and he is entitled to get relief. But as he is partially employed as manager, he may be denied that right. Therefore, I am afraid that whatever we may try to do, we must be very specific in this matter. I think we should say that the working journalist means a person whose principal avocation is that of a journalist, etc. And then they are also termed as workmen under the Industrial Disputes Act. Otherwise, we will be faced with that sort of difficulty as other trade unions are experiencing in their day-to-day work in the appellate tribunal or the industrial tribunal or in other courts. I hope that the minister in charge of this bill will consult the labor minister who is an expert in this matter as to how to safeguard really the interests of these people by putting a proper definition for the working journalists. Now I have got another point. Really, this should have been brought forward by the Labor Department as they have been operating the Industrial Disputes Act. Under the Industrial Disputes Act, we have got some machinery which has got to come into being when there is a dispute. Now, under the existing Industrial Disputes Act, the appropriate government has got to order in writing to this machinery as the working journalists are spread over throughout the country. I am not clear in my mind whether for the purpose of the working journalists this Industrial Disputes Act will be operated by the central government or by the state governments. Both the center and the state governments have their own machinery. From the Chief Labor Commission to the reconciliation officer, the government of India has got a set of machinery throughout the country, and again the state governments have got their own labor commissioner and other officers. I want that that also must be specifically provided in this bill as to whether they have got to go to the central government or to the state governments for the redress of their grievances. Now, the tribunals are not permitted to undertake any case as soon as it is referred by either of the parties unless it is specifically ordered by the appropriate government. Now, my own opinion is this that for the time being, it should be operated by the Labor Ministry of the central government. Neither the Information and Broadcasting Ministry nor the state governments should operate this measure. It is a new thing incorporated by the central government, and the government of India knows what for they are coming forward with this piece of legislation. I want that the Information Ministry should hand over this business to the Labor Ministry, which should operate this through its own ministry. Sir, anyone who knows anything of journalism in this country will welcome the protection that this bill gives to working journalists. There is also no doubt that their present load of is a hard one and that it is difficult sometimes even for the best of them to discharge their duties honestly, but the remarks made by my honorable friend make me anxious to understand the scope of the bill. My honorable friend spoke of the protection given to editors who expressed their views freely, even though they may be unpalatable to the proprietors of their papers. Sir, it is really the objection of the bill to make the working journalists to decide the policy of the paper to which they are now attached. Question mark. Stop.